Hello, Flute Examiner followers. Keith here. I'm going to talk with a very dear friend of mine about trauma and managing authentic self and making music. Dr. Daniel Shineberg. He's an active freelance flutist, teacher, and board certified music therapist in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. So nice to be here, Keith. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks to agreeing for the interview. So let's talk a little bit. So we go way, way back. And we were talking just before this, just to get a kind of a feel for what we're going to do. We go way, way back on the Book of Faces, and Daniel was actually the first custom flute stand order I ever did. So we've we've been friends for a while. And it's always nice to see him at NFA and all the other shindigs and just to chat on the phone. So Daniel's a very dear friend of mine, and we go way back. So this is a pleasure for me to get to do this. So let's talk a little bit about your program, the Inspired Flute. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the Inspired Flute is a program. It's a therapeutic program that I have designed that will allow students of any age, whether they be young, college, amateurs, older adults, who feel like they are blocked in some way from what they love to do, which is make music. The purpose, as a music therapist, I get to work in many, many areas, and I'm a behavioral health specialist. So I'm very educated in CBT informed music therapy and DBT informed music therapy. And I'm also working on my certification in therapeutic meditation practices that I will incorporate music into. The idea of this is we all have life experiences that take us through different moments, different ups, different downs, left, right, that sort of derail us from our journey and our path. And it can stall the music making. It is something I would consider it almost the same as when someone says to me, I can't sing. Well, of course you can sing. Somebody told you you couldn't sing. And that's why you think you can't sing. And so in general, the idea is to work through these past experiences, or even in the present moment, that are getting in the way of someone living up to their wants, their needs, their ability to share music in the public setting, which I think is so important. Community music making is really something that is so essential. And being in Texas, where community music making is so lively, I've been very inspired by that. And I currently have 3 people in my program who I'm working with at various stages of their life to work on these experiences that when they pick up the flute, they're no longer having that flashback of, or they're no longer making the transference into. They're no longer thinking about the limited beliefs and thought process that come along just with living life in general, so that when they pick up the flute, it's just about the flute. And they get that wonderful experience that we all know, and that research evidence, or evidence-based research, has shown improves our quality of life. It raises our dopamine levels, it raises our serotonin levels, it gives us such a wonderful soul feeling, being able to communicate a language with each other. It's a very important program. And what I was finding through my own studio teaching is that just solely as a flute teacher, so many of my kids were coming in needing so much more due to, especially after what happened with COVID. That was a very traumatizing experience for the younger generation. And, you know, when you're just a flute teacher, you have an ethical boundary of not going to those areas. You know, we have to really stay in our scope of practice. And, you know, I was talking with so many colleagues, and they were like, you know, our hands are tied. I have this, you know, person who is coming in and needing this extra support, but I can't give it to them. I'm not qualified. Well, it just seemed to me, well, I am a certified music therapist. I am qualified. Why am I not doing something about this? Why am I not giving a safe place to give that extra added support while working on whatever it is they need to flutistically? Now, with that said, that's not to mean that I am a flute teacher in this sense. I would be their life coach music therapist in this sense. So it's a HIPAA protected and ethics bound program that they would agree into that is very guarded by the American Psychological Association, as well as the AMTA Code of Ethics. And so it would be a program designed therapeutically for them so that when they return to their lessons, they're no longer feeling, acting on, being reactive to, and or someone who is an older adult can do the same thing, someone who's a younger child, with the end goal of really getting what in education is called the metacognition process back in flow, so that the learning process is going forth, so that they are absorbing the information correctly, problem solving in a way that is not reactive, and promoting themselves and giving themselves the power. The saying of the Flute program is, trust the process and take back your power. And so that's essentially what I want to do for the younger generation who is really in quite need of a lot of help.
Yeah, it was a scary couple of years because we just didn't know what was going on, and I think there are quite a few years worth of musicians that got caught up in it and lost time.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. Can we talk about trauma for a bit?
Yeah.
What is it, and how can it affect performers? And I think defining what trauma is probably very important. As it seems like we all have it, we just may not even really know that it's affecting us or have identified what that is. So yeah, talk a little bit about trauma and how that can affect us as musicians.
Well, the literal definition of trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. What does that mean? That could be so many different things to so many different people based on their life experiences and where they come from and what they are trying to add into the world or what was taken away from them. What might seem a traumatic experience to someone may not be a traumatic experience to someone else just based on their own life circumstances. And so, one, trauma is deeply subjective. However, what I consider trauma outside of this definition, which is more or less an umbrella term, is an adverse life experience. This is an experience in which someone has experienced an abandonment, someone has experienced a betrayal, someone has experienced a loss, someone has experienced a great visual disturbance, seeing a car accident. That can be a traumatic experience for someone. It's a deeply subjective thing. What happens with trauma is that we all have heard, we've been talking about it. There are books about it. There are sports psychology books about it. There are just so many and such wonderful documented resources on the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism. Essentially, where all of my education is from the MIT Trauma Research Center at MIT. And the idea is that the body keeps the score. What happens with an adverse life experience is that we have what a lot of scientists call the reptilian brain. That would be these back parts of your brain that include the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the cerebellum, all of these things that help regulate stress hormones and movement within the body. Whenever an adverse life experience happens, the body, which is part of being a mammal, sort of makes a mnemonic device out of it. And it is designed to take you away from that experience and protect you. And so that is essentially where the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism comes from, is your body trying to protect itself from a perceived threat of some kind, this type of traumatic experience. And that is essentially how trauma works within the brain. The problem is that we live in a wonderful age of technology and a wonderful age of instant gratification, a wonderful age of stimuli coming at us. Well, the prefrontal cortex, where all of that information is going to be processed doesn't have, it takes longer for that front part of the brain to digest the information before your reptilian brain absorbs the information. So what essentially happens is there's a disconnect between the way that your body is reacting through this primitive part of the brain before the front part of your brain can be like, wait, is this actually a dangerous situation? Is this actually a situation that is the same as a previous experience? Is this a situation where I'm going to feel those same things? We call that the trigger. In modern psychology, we call that they've been triggered. You know, we hear that word all the time. And what ends up happening is that when a trigger happens and the brain is like, oh my gosh, this is perceived similar, because the front part of the brain has not had the time to really process the information, your body immediately goes back into that fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. And a cycle is created. Those synapses are then sort of absorbed into the brain. What ends up happening if someone has gone through incredible life experiences as a young child or a teenager, those are so ingrained into their psyche, into their brain, that it is evolved around it. It's almost as simple. This is going to sound like a dramatic statement, but I am very serious about it. It's almost like a very small traumatic brain injury in a way. It can lead to traumatic brain injury, actually. But for the most part, it really stunts how we are visually perceiving the world around us, how are we reacting to our environments, and how we're interacting with people. Well, essentially, what is music making other than listening, looking, and reacting to those situations? And if someone has led through a lot of life or has had a lot of adverse life experiences, it almost becomes, there are several responses that I have personally seen. And as a teacher, I'm sure you have seen them as well. People seize. People get incredible stage fright. People develop really codependent relationships on the opinions of their peers and their colleagues and their teachers for that external validation, for the limited beliefs that are caused out of the trauma. I call them the I ams, the I am not good enough, the I am a broken person, I am, the list goes on and on and on, depending on the person. And the problem is that we have gone through generation of it doesn't matter, you suck it up and do the gig. Well, what's the difference between that and what has really happened, let's say, within the USA gymnastics community, with all of the severe traumas and all the lack of mental health awareness and how much damage that did to generations of young women? I don't really see that it's very different in the generations that we've created with musicians. That's not to say that I'm somehow criticizing the expectation you show up prepared and be professional. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it does seem to be that we do and have had multiple generations of you compartmentalize, you deal with it, and be done. I don't really know what the good of that is being a musician, because our purpose is to have a human sharing experience. Music just isn't a fine art. It's part of the humanities, right? I mean, this is why it was considered medicine in the times of the Greeks. You know what I mean? And this is why we have music therapy, It is a healing art form. And how can we have that exchange, that healing human exchange with each other, if we are compartmentalizing to the point of it being solely about our ego? Now, the ego is an important thing. However, because it is part of a defense mechanism, ego it is a necessary part of a human personality. But when it gets to the point that we've compartmentalized it into I can only be if I went to, I only am if I studied with or whom, and I only can achieve if I have done. Well, that says a lot of that says a lot of damage has been done. If we have multiple people coming out of school, entering music programs, feeling that this is what we have to do to achieve a successful and healthy music making career, which it's not. And so we run into musicians who have burnout. After grad school, they get so jaded by the experience that they never want to play again. We have people who are very ambivalent towards their mentors who were only there to try to guide them, but because of the transference issues, they really feel even more traumatized than they were before. We have issues where, you know, they run into physical fatigue and injury. And then it becomes about healing from the injury, which then leads to more of the cycles of, I couldn't cut it because. It leads into a lot of different areas that affect us. It also affects how people treat each other and treat each other in a way that are not using what I refer to as conscious-based thinking. This would be like being empathic, compassionate, aware, mindful, patient, and most importantly, understanding of what someone might be able to go through, despite the fact that the expectation is you show up and just do the gig. Well, how can they? You know, it makes no sense to me. But that's what's still being perpetuated. I feel like this is why maybe people don't get tenure in jobs. This is why people don't get tenure in orchestras. This is why some people, you know, never want to pick up the instrument again, and then they pick it up much, much later in life when their bodies really have given out, and they feel like picking it up is going to be a wonderful thing when, as a matter of fact, I've worked with a lot of older adults, it becomes almost sort of a mini therapy session.
So
So, yes.
this trauma that, you know, the life experience that, like you said, is subjective. What is really nothing for one person is like freeze or flight for somebody else. I think we've all experienced loss or grieving or seen something we wished we hadn't, or personally experienced something that was very detrimental to our development. And that, you know, from our conversations, it prevents you from being your authentic self. And can you talk a little bit about what an authentic self is, how that affects a performer, how that may affect their day-to-day life, and the benefits of being able to be truly authentic?
Well, I mean, we could go into like the whole Webster's dictionary term of what that term authentic means. What it means to me, Dr. Shineberg, is that I'm living a life that is free of codependent behavior, that I'm living a life where I am having joy and abundance. That abundance does not necessarily mean financial abundance, but abundance in comfort of my living space, my body, friendships, family. Having abundance, it means that I am able to express myself and be who I am without fear of retribution or judgment or betrayal. Or I think what I find most is taking things out of context for someone else's own sake or ego. You know, I think that's what being an authentic person is. Now, when you are your authentic self, the reality is not everyone is going to like you. When you are your authentic self, you are accepting the fact that you're going to run into people that you're just not going to click with. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be cruel and unusual to them. It just means that, you know what, I understand we're different people in different points of our life. We're going to shake hands. We're going to smile. We're going to be polite. But then we're going to go find people who I like to say, again, and I know you're going to ask me later, that divine team. And so that's what being an authentic self is to me. Why does that have an effect on a performer? Well, one, it decreases your stage fright dramatically. And I can tell you, I just did a tour in Tennessee, and you know about my flute drama. I'm sure everybody on the Book of Faces knows about that drama. So playing an instrument that I was not comfortable with, and that was not mine, and I had a beast of a program. Getting up on stage and just simply being like, I'm still going to have fun. I'm still going to do my best and take the opportunity to have fun. I'm going to, why did I come up with my Homelands program? Why am I wanting to share that? So I let my ego go, and I wanted to have a human sharing experience with them. And so it decreases your stage fright dramatically. And I can tell you, this was funny at Middle Tennessee State. I walked out confidently without one of my pieces of music. It was really funny. And you just laugh about it. You're able to move on, and you're able to take control of the performing situation. When you're in control, then regardless of whatever happens, you can make music happen. You can communicate with your collaborative artist. You can maneuver the instrument, whatever instrument it is you're playing on. It also has a tremendous effect because it expresses how you are utilizing the markings on the page. If I'm caring so much about what these people are going to think about this exact dynamic at this exact moment at this exact time, well, sure, we want to end with that goal. But if I'm putting so much energy into what that subjective opinion is of what I'm doing, how could I possibly even begin to try to achieve it? I'm being codependent on an audience's thinking, and that's completely not okay. And again, being back to what is it being authentic, it's not being codependent. So you really have to find within myself, yourself, we have to find that strength and courage to trust the process, take back your power, and just give it your all. If they don't like it, they're not going to call you. Don't worry about it. You will find plenty of other opportunities should that happen. And to be perfectly honest, Keith, I've rarely found that happen. I find when I am my most authentic self and I am allowed to be this, I've been given great gift. Great gift.
Same. When I love talking with my audience because it helps me calm, but it also helps me connect with them. And some of my best performances are when I've let go of everything and just played the music. So I've been able to touch a little bit on that and not worry about the little black bits that are all around the notes and how somebody may perceive those. So I have a bit of that, and it's very freeing. And honestly, those are the recitals for me that people have complimented the most. So I think that's a really important point to make is letting.
Well, and the point also that I want to make, having subbed in orchestra, especially when I was subbing with the Kansas City Symphony, and I was playing next to my old teacher, Michael Gordon, and here's Michael Stern and Kayla Bergeroff, and I'm with all these amazing players and musicians in the front and the back. What I realized is that even being in an orchestra where they teach us that this is where it is the most utmost, that you have to be at your most relaxed in that situation. And so even then, it doesn't matter whether it's a recital or a master class or you're in the orchestra seat, it still follows through. So and the reason why I say that is because I think there's this misnomer out there that unless you're playing like a robot within that section, you have to be prepared. I'm not saying that at all. You have to be absolutely on point, in the pocket, prepared, but it can't be at the expense of yourself. You're not gonna play at your best. You're gonna self-sabotage at that point.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So like I said, we chatted a hair before we started recording, so I kind of gave you the lay of the land. I'm going to combine two questions because we've already answered a little bit of them. But one of the things was how and why you developed the program, which you've talked about. You've observed your students and you've seen your own personal experiences as well, and so we know what motivated it. Tell us a little bit about your own journey. How did your own personal trauma affect or block you from being authentic, and how did it change or affect your ability to make music? So you mentioned the flute situation, but yeah, talk a little bit about some of your own journey, if you will, and obviously what you're comfortable sharing. And
Yeah. So and as well as other people who are part of this, my new divine team, know that the last 5.5 years were pretty rough. Between starting when I had an older brother who passed away and finding him, and losing my grandmother who helped raise me, my grandfather, my best friend of 25 years, who was like a surrogate mother, my own mother's very deteriorating health, the rigors of going back to graduate school, and being engrossed in what is and what has been defined through me through a lot of my own trauma therapy as a really toxic, triangulative, narcissistic, abusive series of relationships. And so what that led to was I do have a back issue. I have what's called congenital disc deterioration.
Mm-hmm.
So my back is already, I've already had surgeries, and so my back was already out of alignment. It got to the point where I couldn't stand anymore for maybe 40 minutes at the most. I was in such severe back pain. My legs were going numb. I remember at NFA in Phoenix, I was playing in this group for my two mentors, Jill Felber and Claudia Anderson, and I was having to sit down every 20 minutes. I was in such pain. It was pretty severe. It affected my breathing. It affected how I was able to read the music. It had a profound effect on my mood, such as when you can't walk or you can't stand, it depresses you pretty quickly. I have empathy for adults of a specific age who have to go through gait and mobility issues. It forced me, my body went into protection mode, and I gained a ton of weight, even though I wasn't eating, but then I was overstuffing with work. And I was also, when I was finding myself in certain toxic situations, wanting to drink. And so what ended up happening is that the bubble sort of burst. And this is where I say divine intervention, is because the very situations that were the toxic ones were the ones that sort of kicked me out, which was another sort of series of abandonment traumas. And you remember seeing me at that state and time. And what I did was I did not play. I couldn't play. I didn't, this was the first recital I've given in a year and a half. I did not do any playing or presenting or lecturing or masterclass research between, December of 2000, that would have been March of 2023 up until, September of 2024. That's a long period of time of zero flute. So what I did during that time was I went into severe trauma counseling to deal with all of this stuff, to deal with all of these adverse life experiences, to deal with all of this abandonment, betrayal, rejection that was being told was my fault, where people were gaslighting me into no longer being my authentic self, that who I was an inherently wrong and bad person. And so once through all of that counseling, I was able to start functioning again. I lost a considerable amount of weight. My back stopped hurting and allowed me to go come up with my new self-care plan, which is I go swimming now every day. As you know, I get like obsessive with it, where I am now swimming. I went to physical therapy to work on the physical issues. After I transitioned out of traditional therapy, that situation you know about too, I now have one of the most incredible life coach and therapist who is helping me heal even deeper layers of that, which then allowed even more weight to come off and sinus issues to clear up. And I no longer have sleep issues. I no longer want to drink, even though I wasn't drinking. I am being present with my friends. I'm no longer seeking external validation again. I'm no longer, doing all of these really, really unhealthy behaviors and attitudes. And I'm not ashamed to say it. That's the thing, is that so many of us go through these life moments, and this is real. And the proof is in the pudding, and what it finally led into was the universe and that last incident where my flute was taken away from me, where it was like the universe was like, okay, it's time to leave. It's time to, with all of this radical acceptance comes radical change. And that radical change led to, it's time to leave academia. It's time to get back into full-time performing. It's time to go back to research and clinical work. It's time to be your own employer, and you need to find a place where there is no more of this baggage associated with it. And so with that, you know, I started applying nationally for jobs, and it came down to, am I, and I remember talking to some trusted mentors. I'm like, and you as well, I'm like, do I go to Colorado or do I go to Texas? And everyone's like, you know, and it was like, you know, and which sounds like odd, you know, you would, you know, in today's political climate, but it really came down to, where am I going to seek abundance? And so it just seemed that Austin was the best fit, and I just took a leap of faith. And with that leap of faith, I've had tremendous gains, you know, more of the abundance of, I've made more money in the last, you know, 2 months than I ever have in my life. And the financial stability is incredible. I'm now having more playing gigs this year than I ever was even before the situations occurred. I'm having more, you know, so the abundance and everything is happening, which is again more proof in the pudding that I was not crazy, that these were severe experiences, and that I can get back to being my authentic self again and perform again. And so with that, it seems like, well, let me use my experiences not in a way of transferring or healing other people, but as a way of empathically knowing what type of modalities work to push through it. Because the thing is, not playing and not doing any clinical work is the best thing you can do when you're living life. And so now that you're back to it and I have healed it, I can safely say that I'm not going to be using this as a way to transfer, but as a way of giving people the tools that are necessary. Because honestly, people are just really incredibly smart, right? I mean, I need to say that. So they're not really in need of like what the hamster wheel of therapy can cause, you know. It's just they need the tools. So why not find a way to give them the tools? And that was another way of developing this program and my own journey of like, well, I have the tools. Let me share the tools. I was gifted with them. I know what it feels like. I'm not going to share any of that with them, but let me give you the tools to help you so you can find your own authentic journey in this way of becoming an authentic musician. And with that, you know, then my flute came back.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works out.
Right.
And it's almost like we've had this discussion before. Now the next question that I was going to ask you is, what do you personally do to help yourself deal with everything for the healing purpose? And you already mentioned, you know, swimming, so there's some physical exercise and things, but what are a couple things that you do on a regular daily basis that help you keep yourself on track?
So what I do to keep myself grounded on every day is I have what I now call my non-negotiable self-care routine. This is something everybody talks about, but I don't think people are really like, you know, everybody talks about it. Everybody's aware of it. Everybody is like, yeah, it's almost like one of those New Year resolution kinds of things that people don't ever actually do. But this is a real non-negotiable routine that I'm in every day. So first one is non-negotiable sleep. 11 o'clock, lights out. I don't care what hasn't been done, submitted, billed, practiced. 11 o'clock, lights need to be out. Then I do a series of what I have learned through my new life coach and therapist are these, which I'm being certified in, which are these therapeutic meditation practices. These are things for me to work on that came up through the day. What limited beliefs am I still engaging in throughout the day that I need to work on and soothe? What are these younger parts or past parts of myself that I need to soothe? And so meditation, I do at least 2 at the course of the night, because for some reason my body still wants to wake up around 3 a.m., which is weird. But, you know, I do it, I fall asleep, I wake up, and then I do a different one should it happen. But then in the morning, I journal. And it's not the Dear Diary, my life, you know, it's not that kind of journaling. It's what are the inspired actions I'm going to take throughout my day? I'm going to try to make to go in with grace and compassion when I have to see specific clients on this day. I'm going to make sure that I don't drink as much coffee. I need to make sure that, it becomes an inspired action list that I'm journaling. And then if I don't complete it, it's not going to go down that rabbit hole of the I'm not, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to go down that hole. It's going to be like, okay, so what am I engaging in today? What am I still engaging in, and what do I need to soothe? And then I have the journaling and the meditation practices that are going to work on that. Maybe I need more time for play. Maybe I need more time to eat. Maybe I need more time to drink water. Maybe I need more time to sit and silence for 10 minutes if that's what it needs to be. And so every morning, that has become a really important routine that I have to do, and it's reflective. After that, after seeing, an ethical caseload per day for me, because I go to my clients, it's about 5 clients, 5 to 6. And after that, it's complete silence, no phone, no sort of screen time. I have my dog, and this is Lila. Everybody, Lila, come here. And she's my American Cocker Spaniel, and lots of pictures of her. And I spend 30 minutes walking her every day, or taking her to the local dog park where, it's just outside listening to wind, to nature and things like that. Then it becomes the non-negotiable swim time where I either say it's 25 laps or 40 minutes, whatever first.
It's fair. That's fair.
Which I probably shouldn't be doing. And then it comes into playtime. And this is where I no longer call flute my practice time practicing. I call it play. I have completely revamped why I'm doing it. It's my playtime. It's my fun time. This is where I get to utilize all the dumb number of degrees that I have and do something really creative with it, right? And so that becomes my playtime. And then, the rest of the night plays out the way it's supposed to. And then the next day I do it. And that also means I'm making time to talk to friends, and reaching out and staying connected to people who allow me to be my authentic self, and trusting that.
That's awesome. So you've mentioned this a few times, and this is kind of a fun question, but what is a divine team? And can you tell us about your divine team?
Yeah. So a divine team is a term that my current life coach therapist coins. And it's basically a very wonderful way to say chosen family. And so having the unfortunate experiences over the last 5 years to outlive my family, thank God my mother's still here. I find people again who are going to be these trusted individuals who allow me to be myself. And so that group is quite small. Well, first of all, it's up to anybody to have whatever their, divine team, their divine numbers are. But for me, I keep this very small, and personally very small, for good reason. I find that when you're your authentic self, people think you have an agenda. Mm-hmm. When you're your authentic self, people think you're out for something. When you're your authentic self, people tend to want to manipulate the situation and take a lot from you because of their own life experiences they're currently working with. And so my divine team is actually the people who have helped get me through and have stood by me when everything has gone down. And that was sort of divinely planned. That's why I also like to say the word divine team. You, for example, you've been innumerable help for me professionally, statistically, as a friend, as a colleague. I have one of my best friends, Ali Josha, in Colorado. I'm so glad that I have one of my new friends, Tamara Dury, up in Dallas, and then really special professional colleagues, Tim Hagen, Aaron Torres, and then there are some amazing UMKC alum who have been beautiful to me. James Hall has been beautiful to me, and my trusted mentors have always been on my side and had my back and let me know it. And so I consider all of that part of my Seen Divine team. I also have what I like to think of as my unseen divine team. I don't, talk religion or, spirituality with people, but these are the things that I rely on in my faith-based practices, which, I never talk about with anybody. And so that would be part of that practice as well. So that's my divine team. And the reality is we all need it. We all need to take the time in finding it, and we all need to really engage in discerning and learning how to be alone. Well, learning how to be alone is how you find your team.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Who might benefit from this Inspired Flute program?
I think really anybody could be a benefit from this program. Obviously, it would be best if they didn't have a pre-existing relationship with me.
Yeah.
Just for ethical and safety reasons, I would actually refer them out. But what I would say is if you are having incredible performance anxiety, you're having a lot of the negative limited beliefs due to past life experiences, if you find that you're transferring, a lot of the time as a teacher, I was really surprised how many people had like father issues that were like, really taking them out on me. And I'm like, I don't know what it is you're so angry about. And then I'm like, no, remember, Daniel, like, where is this coming from? So I'm finding that as well. People who are having a lot of transference issues, people who've had a lot of trauma, I'm very equipped to work with. And so people who've had a lot of adverse life experiences, whether that be physical, emotional, psychosocial, I would be equipped to work with. And then I love working with adults of a different age. They're my favorites. And then I also love working with adults or young adults who are what they now call neurodivergent. These are people who, back in the day, they would say just the ASD spectrum or learning disabled or whatever. I love working with that because I am neurodivergent. I'm very dyslexic. And so having the tool set and the creative ways to help people, learn music in that way, and which can be traumatizing in academic settings, are also people I would love to work with as well.
Well, we're going to be sure to give your email and a way to reach out and contact you if any of our followers are interested in looking into your program or want a referral to somebody if they already know you. But Daniel, thank you very much
Thank you.
for taking the time to share your journey, share your story and your program with us. I think it's going to be very beneficial, and I hope people reach out to you and try to find their authentic self. So thank you very much, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Keith. Always, always, always.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.